It was exactly 6 a.m. when the world fell apart, not with a bang, but with the hollow, gut-wrenching silence of an empty boat slip where my entire life used to be anchored. The water at Slip 52 in the Crystal Cove Yacht Club was black and still, mocking me, while my 17-year-old daughter, Lily, stood shivering on the dock, her tears dropping into the oil-slicked abyss where our 1985 Boston whaler had been floating just the night before, the last tangible piece of her mother that we had left on this earth. Before I could even process the theft, my phone buzzed with a voicemail that I will remember until the day I die, the voice dripping with that sickeningly sweet condescension that only one woman in this zip code could muster. "Good morning, Jack. This is Patricia Patty Vanderhoven from the HOA board," she purred, the sound of her voice triggering a physical nausea in my gut. "Just a courtesy call to let you know that your vessel has been towed for violating our new aesthetic compatibility statutes. So if you want to retrieve that heap of junk, you can contact the impound lot, provided you can afford the release fees, of course." She thought she was just crushing a broke, widowed marine electrician who didn't belong in her manicured world. She thought she was taking out the trash, but what Patty, the self-proclaimed queen of Crystal Cove, didn't realize was that she had just declared war on a man who has spent the last 25 years understanding the intricate, unforgiving nervous systems of high-end marine electronics. When that tow truck dragged my boat away, it didn't just steal fiberglass and an outboard motor, it pulled the pin on a grenade that I was about to roll right into the lobby of her precious life. Before we dive into the wreckage, do me a favor and comment down below if you've ever had an HOA try to ruin your life, and hit that subscribe button because the payback coming up is something you are going to want to see to believe. To understand why this hurts so much, you have to understand that Lily and I don't live in the mansions that line the waterfront. We live in a shoebox apartment just outside the gates, surviving on my electrical repair contracts and the memory of my wife, Sarah, who passed away 3 years ago, leaving us with a mountain of medical debt and a hole in our hearts that only the ocean could fill. That Boston whaler wasn't just a boat. It was the sanctuary where Sarah and I had taught Lily to fish. It was the place where the salt air seemed to scrub away the anxiety of the bankruptcy lawyers and the collection calls. Every weekend, Lily, who battles type 1 diabetes, would sit at the helm, her glucose monitor on the console, and for a few hours, we weren't the poor relations of the marina, we were captains of our own destiny, tapping the hull, just like my father, Roberto, a legendary naval engineer, taught me to do for luck. But luck runs out when you cross paths with a predator like Patty Vanderhoven. Picture a woman who wears white linen pantsuits to inspect bilge pumps, drives a pearl-white Lexus SUV with the license plate HOA boss, and runs Elite Harbor Brokerage, a company that seemingly specialized in selling dreams, but was actually in the business of crushing souls. She had been circling my slip for weeks like a shark in Chanel, clicking her heels on the dock planks, telling me that my boat, which I had lovingly restored with my own hands, was an eyesore that didn't fit the luxury branding of Crystal Cove. "It's grandfathered in, Patty," I had told her a dozen times, fighting the urge to tell her exactly where she could shove her clipboard. "Rules change, Jack," she had smiled, handing me a citation that claimed vessels older than 30 years required a special aesthetic permit that cost more than my rent. "It's nothing personal, we just need to maintain standards for the right kind of people." The right kind of people apparently didn't include single dads working off debt, because when I tried to fight the citation, I found out she had pushed the rule through an emergency closed-door meeting without the legally required notification period, a tactic that works only because guys like me can't afford the $5,000 retainer for a lawyer to challenge it. So, on day 73 of her harassment campaign, I came home from a rewiring job to find the slip empty and a business card for Elite Harbor Brokerage tucked into my apartment door frame with a handwritten note. "We buy distressed assets, cash in hand." That night, Lily and I sat on the floor of our living room eating instant noodles because the impound fees were going to be $3,500 plus daily storage, money that was supposed to go towards her insulin and her college fund. Lily looked up from her laptop, her face pale, her hands trembling as her blood sugar spiked from the stress, and she asked me, "Dad, why do they hate us so much?" I looked at my daughter, I looked at the tremors in her hands, and I felt something inside me snap, not like a twig, but like a high-tension cable parting under load, dangerous and whipping through the air. They don't hate us, honey. I told her, my voice frighteningly calm. They just think we're weak. And they're about to find out that when you cut the power to a marine electrician's life, he doesn't just sit in the dark, he rewires the whole damn grid. Patty wasn't satisfied with just taking the boat. She wanted to erase me completely, so the anonymous complaints started hitting the city inspector's office the very next week. I've held my master certification for 15 years. I'm the guy the other electricians call when they can't figure out why a mega yacht is blowing fuses. But suddenly, I was getting flagged for unlicensed work on jobs I had finished 6 months ago. The inspector, a decent guy named Frankie, pulled me aside at the hardware store and told me, "Jack, someone is headhunting you. These reports are coming in daily, detailed stuff, photos of your truck, timestamps. It's a coordinated hit job." I lost 3 major contracts that week, $8,000 gone. Poof, just like that, because Patty was whispering at the yacht club cocktail hours that I was unstable, that I was a liability, that letting that man work on your boat was asking for a fire. Lily came home from school early one Tuesday, her eyes red and puffy, because the kids of the yacht club members, kids she used to tutor, were repeating what their parents said at dinner, calling her the daughter of a criminal, a scam artist. "Dad." Patty came to the school. Lily choked out, throwing her backpack on the floor. "She's on the booster club board." She told the principal that having a student with a parent under investigation for fraud reflects poorly on the academy's reputation. My blood ran cold, colder than the deep Atlantic, because attacking a man is one thing, but attacking his child, endangering her education, her mental health, her physical health with the stress-induced glucose spikes, that is a declaration of nuclear war. I sat there, tapping the old brass anchor bracelet my father gave me, the metal cool against my skin, and I realized that playing by the rules was a luxury for people who could afford justice. I called up my old partner, Manny Rivera, a guy who could wire a submarine with his eyes closed and had zero patience for bullies. "Manny," I said, staring at a photo of Patty's smiling face on a real estate flyer. "I need the schematics for the entire Crystal Cove electrical grid, the ones we installed 5 years ago, and I need you to bring the long-range scanners." "Sparky," Manny replied, using my old Navy nickname. "You sound like you're planning a felony." "No," I said, watching Lily sleep on the couch, exhausted from crying. "I'm planning a renovation. I'm going to shine a light on every rat in the marina, and by the time I'm done, Patty Vanderhoven is going to wish she had never learned to spell HOA. We went into what Lily called ghost protocol, operating in the shadows, using my intimate knowledge of the marina's infrastructure to turn the hunter into the prey. I convinced Officer Tom, a security guard who was sick of Patty treating him like a valet parker, to look the other way while I installed microcameras in the electrical pedestals near the guest slips. It didn't take long to find the rot. In fact, the corruption was so blatant it was almost insulting. Reviewing the footage at 2 a.m., eyes burning from fatigue, I watched Patty meet with Brad Sterling, the marina manager, a slimeball who wore too much cologne and fake Rolexes. They were standing right there on the dock, handing off envelopes of cash thick enough to choke a horse. Lily, who had turned her grief into a laser-focused investigation, started cross-referencing the dates of the violations with Patty's sales records at Elite Harbor Brokerage. "Dad, look at the pattern." Lily pointed at her color-coded spreadsheet, her finger tracing the timeline of theft. "She tags a boat on Monday. Brad authorizes the tow on Friday, and by Tuesday, it's listed on her site as an estate sale acquisition with no mention of the original owner." She wasn't just stealing my boat. She was running a chop shop for luxury vessels, targeting the elderly, the sick, and the struggling. People who couldn't fight back, and she was using the HOA bylaws as her weapon. But the rabbit hole went deeper. With the help of Elena Rossi, a paralegal whose son I had coached in Little League, we pulled the title histories and found that Patty was double-dipping. She would sell a stolen boat to a buyer in another state, then file a fraudulent insurance claim saying it was stolen again from her lot, collecting the payout and the sale price. It was brilliant, it was evil, and it was federal. We brought in Detective Vance, an investigator for the insurance companies who had been chasing a ghost fleet of stolen hulls across 3 counties, and when he saw our evidence, his jaw hit the floor. "You realize," Detective Vance said, scrolling through Lily's data, "that this isn't just a crooked HOA lady? This is interstate commerce of stolen goods, wire fraud, and racketeering. You've just handed me a RICO case on a silver platter. But we couldn't just arrest her. We had to destroy her. We had to make the evidence so undeniable that her high-priced lawyers couldn't spin it. So we devised Operation Violet Storm. I went to a salvage yard and bought a beat-up 1978 Sea Ray for $600, a sacrificial lamb for the slaughter. Manny and I spent 3 nights in his garage, turning that boat into a Trojan horse, rigging the bilge pumps not with water, but with modified canisters of bank security dye, high pressure, indelible purple ink that explodes on a remote trigger. We weren't just going to mark the boat. We installed these devices on every single vessel in her stolen inventory under the guise of routine electrical maintenance, which Brad Sterling was too lazy to supervise. We were ready. We were confident. And then Patty showed us exactly how dangerous a cornered animal can be. 3 days before the trap was set to spring, I woke up to the screaming of fire alarms and the smell of acrid smoke choking my lungs. Our apartment building was burning. I grabbed Lily, who was stumbling through the haze in her pajamas, clutching her insulin kit, and we ran down the stairs as the flames licked the door of our unit. We stood in the parking lot, watching the fire department blast water into our living room, watching my tools, my files, and the few photos I had left of Sarah turn into ash and steam. The fire marshal found traces of accelerant near the electrical panel outside our unit. It wasn't an accident. It was a message. We lost everything that night. Lily's laptop with the evidence was backed up to the cloud. Thank God. But our clothes, our home, our sanctuary was gone. We ended up sleeping on cots in Manny's garage, surrounded by half-wired alternators and the smell of grease. I sat there, watching my daughter sleep fitfully, jumping at every noise, and I felt a darkness take over my soul that scared me more than the fire. She tried to kill us, Manny, I whispered, my voice cracking. She burned down my home because she knows we're close. Manny handed me a lukewarm coffee and put a heavy hand on my shoulder. Then we don't just catch her, Sparky. We bury her. Patty thought the fire would scare us off, that I would take Lily and run to relatives in another state. But she forgot one crucial thing about electricians. We work best when the pressure is high and the wires are live. We weren't running. We were digging in. Then came the news that Patty was moving up her annual Gala of the Seas, the massive auction where she planned to offload 12 acquired boats to wealthy buyers from out of state. It was her exit strategy. Detective Vance confirmed she had booked a one-way ticket to the Caymans for the day after the sale. We have one shot, Special Agent O'Connor from the FBI told us, standing in the cramped garage that was now our command center. If she sells those boats and leaves, we might never get her back. We need to catch her in the act, in possession, in front of witnesses. Oh, there will be witnesses, Lily said, a fierce grin cutting through the soot on her face as she checked the remote triggers on her new tablet. There's going to be a whole audience. The evening of the Crystal Cove Gala was humid, the air thick with the scent of jasmine and expensive champagne, a stark contrast to the grease and sweat of Manny's garage, where I sat hunched over the master control unit. Through the live feed from Lily's hidden phone, she had snuck in disguised as a caterer. I watched the elite of the yachting world mingle on the pristine docks, completely unaware they were standing on a crime scene. And there she was, Patty Vanderhoven, resplendent in a white silk gown that probably cost more than my annual earnings, holding a microphone like a scepter, standing in front of the line of 12 boats, including my Boston whaler, which she had renamed the Legacy Collection. Ladies and gentlemen, her voice boomed over the PA system, smooth as poisoned honey. These vessels represent the pinnacle of maritime history, curated exclusively for elite harbor brokerage. She was smiling, shaking hands, selling my memories, selling the stolen livelihoods of 47 other families, and she looked absolutely untouchable. Brad Sterling was lurking in the background, looking nervous, checking his phone, but Patty was in her element, the queen surveying her kingdom one last time before she looted the treasury. Now, she announced, gesturing to the boats bobbing gently in the water. Let's start the bidding. Dad, Lily whispered into her earpiece, her voice steady. FBI teams are in position. Camera drones are live. It's 6:32 p.m. Do it. I looked at the remote in my hand. I touched the anchor bracelet on my wrist, and I thought about the cold nights, the fire, the tears, and the sheer arrogance of a woman who thought she could treat people like debris. Rain on her parade. I whispered, and I flipped the master switch. The sound wasn't an explosion. It was a synchronized thump hiss that echoed across the water, followed instantly by 12 geysers of pressurized, industrial-grade purple dye erupting from the bilges of the stolen boats. It was magnificent. The dye shot 30 feet into the air, a violet fountain that caught the marina lights, and then rained down in a thick, inescapable mist. The crowd screamed. The pristine white decks of the yachts were instantly coated in neon purple. But the best part, the moment that played in slow motion in my mind, was seeing Patty Vanderhoven stand there, mouth agape, as a cloud of purple mist drifted over the dock and coated her, turning her white silk gown, her blonde hair, and her terrified face into a monochromatic masterpiece of guilt. "What is happening?" she shrieked, clawing at her face, smearing the dye deeper into her skin. Then came the sirens. Not one, but a dozen. FBI agents swarmed from the parking lot, Agent O'Connor leading the charge, her badge flashing in the chaotic purple light. "Patricia Vanderhoven," O'Connor shouted over the panic. "Federal agents. You are under arrest for maritime theft, insurance fraud, and arson." I stepped out of the shadows of the boatyard with Manny, walking right down the center of the dock as the cameras rolled. Patty, handcuffed and dripping purple slime, looked up and locked eyes with me. She looked like a melted candle, her dignity stripped away to reveal the ugly truth underneath. "You," she hissed, spitting purple ink. "You ruined everything." "No, Patty," I said, loud enough for the news crews to hear. "I just turned the lights on. You look good in purple. It really brings out your criminal record." Lily ran over and hugged me, burying her face in my chest, shaking with laughter and relief. "We did it, Dad. We actually did it." The fallout was catastrophic for Patty. The dye, designed to stain bank robbers, didn't wash off for weeks. She sat in her arraignment hearing looking like a bruised grape. The evidence was overwhelming. The tracking data, the financial records, the arsonist, who turned out to be Brad's cousin, flipping on her to save his own skin. Patty was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Brad got 8. We got the boat back. It took 3 weeks of scrubbing to get the purple out of the gel coat, but every time I see a faint lavender hue in the sunlight, I smile. We used the restitution money, a significant sum from the seized assets of Elite Harbor Brokerage, to pay off the medical debts and fully fund Lily's tuition at MIT, where she's now studying marine engineering. But we didn't stop there. Manny, Elena, and I started the Violet Anchor Project, a nonprofit that provides free legal and technical aid to boat owners being harassed by HOAs. We turned a personal vendetta into a shield for the community. As I sit here today, watching the sun set over the water, tapping my father's bracelet, I have to ask you, was the humiliation necessary? Was destroying her life publicly with the dye packs too much? Or was it exactly the kind of poetic justice a bully deserves? Where is the line between justice and revenge? And does it even matter when the system fails to protect the little guy? Let me know what you think in the comments. This is Jack, signing off. Stay safe, stay legal, and never let anyone tow your dreams away.